afternoon, everyone. How are you? Grand Rising. I feel blessed. I feel blessed to be here today. I thank God for waking me up and giving me an opportunity to speak before you. I also thank the ancestors, the spirit of the Lenape, and the Lenape people itself for being here, the first inhabitants of this land. And I want to convey the importance of their history and what they meant to our community and to the north east shore as well. The Lenape people have been here for many, many years, for thousands of years on this land, before the Europeans came. They were here in New York, all 5 boroughs, upstate, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, all the way down even into Delaware. They also went to Canada as well. So there was a large group of people that were here that fell underneath the Lenape umbrella. You also have their related tribes that were in Long Island. There were 13 original tribes in Long Island as well. A lot of people are not really aware of the indigenous history of Long Island. And there's there are also 2 reservations that are in Long Island as present as we have now. And when the Europeans came to this area, it was Giovanni da Verrazzano. He was the first explorer to come. He was Italian, but he sailed for the French. And he's the one that is named, the Verrazzano Bridge is named after. And he called this place New Angoulême. Forgive me, I don't speak French. And it was inhabited by the Algonquin and also the Iroquois, what they consider the Iroquois tribes as well. After he came, the second navigator to come to this area was called Henry Hudson. Now, Henry Hudson was British, but he sailed for the Dutch India Company. Now, for those of you that from the West Indies, you are very familiar with the Dutch India Company, because they had traveled all throughout the islands, South Pacific, different places, taking over land and opportunities and trade routes. The reason why they came here is that this was also a trade route, coming from the tip of Manhattan, going all the way upstate and all the way to Canada, and also into Boston. There are avenues that are still here. Broadway is one of them. Broadway was a trade route that went all the way to Boston. So when the Europeans came here, I guess they thought that they hit, they was heaven on earth. They hit the jackpot, because, they came to a land, first of all, that was very pristine. And they also came to a land that had whales and seals and porpoises and oysters and clams, all kind of seafood. They also had beaver. Deers, bears, all kind of wildlife. They also had different trees, roots, shrubs, fruits. I guess this was a win-win situation, and they came in with the purpose of not getting along, but to take over and to take over resources. So the Lenape basically lived in pretty much harmony with the Dutch, because the Dutch came here in 1609, and they lived pretty much in harmony with them until about 1626, underneath the governor. You hear about Peter Minuit, and he was the governor of the Dutch India Company, and supposedly the Lenape sold Manhattan Island to the Dutch for $24. What they consider $24, but what they consider 60 guilders, which was basically trinkets. Now, the Lenape and most indigenous people never had a concept of ownership. So how they looked at it, how the natives looked at it was that, okay, we allow these people to come to live on our land. The Creator gave us this land. It belongs to no one. We can all get along. We can all live peacefully. The Dutch had another story. And after this transaction happened, they basically wanted them to leave, and that was the start of their conflicts in New York. The Dutch, built a fort downtown called Fort Amsterdam, and it stands on State Street now. And this land was called New Amsterdam. New York was considered New Amsterdam. The entire colony was considered New Netherlands. And the Dutch also set up forts up in Albany. They had forts up in Albany. They had forts everywhere. And I know you guys are very, very familiar with the story of the African Burial Ground and Wall Street, how they had built a wall to keep out the natives and the British, and basically keep people, the slaves and the people that were here insulated. And this went on for a while. After a while, 1664, the Dutch basically sold the so-called Manhattan Island to the British for Suriname. They felt Suriname was more prosperous than our island here. The original name for Manhattan Island was Mannahatta, and it was the name of it was called Hilly Island, the island of many hills. The history of the Hudson River was called Shatemic. It means the river that flows both ways, because the Hudson River is also an estuary where if you drive around Manhattan, the East River meets the Hudson, and they also meet the Atlantic Ocean. And that's why you have all of these. It has such a rich wildlife and not only a rich wildlife, but it also had a lot of shellfish. One of the biggest shellfish that they had at the time were clams and oysters. And not even Manhattan, but even in Staten Island and Liberty Island, and Governor's Island, and the other islands that surround Ward's Island, Randall's Island, all the different buffer islands around Manhattan had a lot of oysters. And this was one of the main things that they used to eat and trade and that sort of thing. And also it was a big, big trading post for beavers. Beavers were sold. They were very valuable. The fur was very valuable in Europe. They had killed off all the beavers in Europe. So when Henry Hudson went back to Europe, he told them there were so many beavers here, and they hunted the beavers to almost extinction. So this is how Manhattan Island was when they got here. The Lenape didn't really, after the Dutch came, and more so the British was even worse in their dealings with them. And a lot of them, they had to start ducking and dodging and running and hiding. And they basically, by the time the 18th century came around, I really don't know how many of them were really left on Manhattan Island. I know that they lived also in the caves in Inwood Park. They have a stone that is a monument that they said that the Lenape had made with the treaty with Peter Minuit. And most of them moved, most of them left, our area, and they went up to Canada, Some of them, there's 2 groups of them out there in Oklahoma. I mean, they're everywhere. Some of them are in Wisconsin. They left in Wisconsin. Some of them are up in Canada. I mean, basically, they had to basically flee for their lives because so many had died, decimated from war and from, heartbreak and stress and disease that, there really wasn't that many left that's down here. Now they have the Muncie Band, which were the people that the Dutch encountered. They live in upstate New York and New Jersey. And then you have the Unami Band, that was the ones that encountered William Penn and his sons. And then they have another group that was originally farther south, in Delaware, which I cannot pronounce their names. So we're going to move on. I just told that we had 5 more minutes. We're going to move on to Alexander Hamilton. For those of you that don't know, his house is located in the park down on 141st Street. Alexander Hamilton came to this country from Nevis, and he pulled himself up. He was a Capricorn. He was born January 11, 1755 or 1757, and he came to this country through the West Indies. And he pulled himself up. He was a very hard worker. He was a very brilliant man. He was a very good writer. He was a very, 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 very ambitious. And he came to this country through the Virgin Islands. The people in the Virgin Islands basically saved the money and brought him here. And he started off, he went to college, then he transferred over there to King's College, which is present-day Columbia University. He didn't finish. He was also involved in politics, and he went and he volunteered for the war, the Revolutionary War, where he was George Washington's aide-de-camp. And he finished that. He went to law school, and he had a residence downtown. And he decided that he wanted to have a summer home. And the summer home happened to be on this land on Convent Avenue where we stand now. Now, it took 2 years for his home to be built. He moved into the home in 1802. He basically stayed there for 2 years because he died in a duel with Aaron Burr, so he didn't really last there that long. But he was America's first Secretary Treasury. He was the one who argued that the courts should interpret the law. He was establishmentarian of the Bank of America. He is one of the framers of the Declaration of Independence. He also helped write and compile the 85 Federalist Papers, the essays that went along with the Federalist Papers. So he was really, really a heavyweight. And he lived on this land for 2 years. His wife that preceded him at death, his wife basically, after he died in the duel, she kept his memory alive. And the family kept the home for like 30 years. And then after that, it had went through different people's hand. And I guess in 1908, the lots were available. And the city college came and I guess bid on the lots, and they were able to move in. But he had 32 acres of land here. His farm went from 140th to 145th Street, St. Nicholas, all the way up to Broadway. So he was one of the most famous residents of New Harlem that we have here. And I guess this is the ending of the. I guess this is it. I don't really have. I know I'm on a time limit here because I could go on and on. I could go on and on. All right, no problem. All right, thank you for having me. Thank you.